right, we are back. And now it is my pleasure to bring to the TFF stage Katie Kilroy. Katie loves working with Alteryx and Tableau and is fortunate that she gets to work with both on a regular basis in her day job as a senior analyst with Arlo Technologies. She co-leads the Cork, Ireland Tableau user group and participates in various data projects run in the Tableau community when time allows. So Katie, welcome. Katie's going to be talking about what is data scaffolding, some practical examples, and I am stoked for this talk. Katie, take it away.
That's great. Thanks for the lovely introduction, Emily. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Just wanted to say quickly, thank you so much to, share the screen here. Thanks so much to Emily, Alex, Caesar, Sarah for organizing this awesome Fringe Fest. I don't know if my screen is shared.
You're not sharing your screen right now.
There we go. 2 seconds. There we go. Yeah, so I just want to say thanks to you guys for organizing this. I know there's tons of stuff that happens in the background that we don't even see, so I know there's a lot of effort that goes into this. So thanks very much for you guys for organizing this. This is my first time presenting at the Fringe Fest, so thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. So yeah, I want to talk about data scaffolding today. So what it is, when you might need it, what kind of data could call for it. So yeah, I would suggest in general, just kind of my 2 cents, that if you're a data analyst and you have not yet come across a scenario where you need to use scaffolding, it's probably only a matter of time before you do. Or I would suggest perhaps you could have had a scenario in the past, maybe in a previous role or a previous department, something like that. You could have had a scenario or a problem that scaffolding could have really helped you and you just didn't realize that this is a technique you can use to help with analysis. So I think it's an important concept to get your head around, and it's a really good skill to develop as an analyst, as a data analyst. So yeah, a couple bits about myself. I work on the analytics team at Arlo Technologies. We make smart home security cameras, similar to the ones you see here on the screen. So in my day-to-day role, I spend a lot of time working with different kinds of data. I work with retail sales data, customer data, subscriber data, services data, lots of data around the products, the devices themselves, so around usage, battery life, that kind of thing. So a broad types of data. So in our team, we do lots of transforming and joining of really big data sets to answer different questions. As you know, as analysts, the questions can change, they get more complex. It depends, as the business changes, things change. So you need to be able to transform that data to answer different questions, okay? So what we do is we use Alteryx for a lot of that type of work, and then we use Tableau for the visualization and reporting side. So I love working with both of these tools. So day to day makes me really enjoy what I do when I go to work every day. So yeah, and what I also want to mention is what I'm going to demo here in Alteryx can certainly be done in Tableau Prep. I know Jenny just gave a fantastic presentation. They're doing some work in Tableau Prep. So just to call that out, it's really kind of the concept behind scaffolding that I kind of want you to have as sort of the key takeaway. Yeah. So there we have it. So yeah, I'm going to go through what is data scaffolding, why would we need to do it, what are some data types that could benefit from scaffolding. I want to go through 2 examples if I can get through them both. The first one will be sort of generic, and I kind of want to describe that because that's sort of a classic scaffolding example. And then the second one has a little more detail to it, so I might gloss over a few things just to kind of drive home the pieces about scaffolding in that example. And then at the end, I'm happy to take any questions. Can fire them into the chat box there, and we'll address those at the end. So I'm just going to set my timer. There we go. So what's data scaffolding? So kind of in my own words, data scaffolding is an approach to filling in missing pieces of data in a data source to help with analysis, okay? So I just thought I'd pull up a picture of scaffolding on a building site, okay? And the definition of the word scaffold. So if you see there, online dictionary, a scaffold is a temporary or movable platform for workers, okay? And then the second piece there, it's saying a supporting framework. So I would describe data scaffolding literally as a support structure that you create from the original data so that it makes answering certain kinds of questions a little bit easier, okay? Yeah, so why would we need to do it? Just keeping kind of the definition there in view at the top at the same time. So why do we need to do it? So what I've found in my years of experience working with data, a typical scenario is that in your data sources, you may have new rows of data coming in only when there's a change. So only when there's activity, when there's an update, when you subscribe to whatever, Netflix or Spotify or something. Chances are they may only have a piece of information about you when you change something. So it's not like you have a record every single day with something that you're signed up to. You might have a record only when you change something. So that's quite common. I've found in my experience. This makes a lot of sense because this is generally an efficient way to store data. But if you're an analyst who needs to answer questions about changes to that data over time, it may not have all the rows of data that you actually need to tell the story of what happened with that data, okay? So what types of data could use scaffolding, all right? So I mentioned HR data. I worked in HR for a long time before I ended up in the analytics space. And it's very common in the HR space to have questions around the employee life cycle, particularly headcount. Okay, so employees are coming into an organization and they're leaving an organization. They might come back again and then leave again, that sort of thing. Employees change job title, salary, department, et cetera, cost centers. So HR data is definitely possible for scaffolding, particularly around headcount. Customer data. So quite similar to HR data in that, okay, now we're just talking about customers rather than employees. So customers join your organization, they leave your organization, they might sign up for a service, they might cancel that service. So in terms of people coming in or going out, we can use scaffolding to help with that, to see trends over time. And sales and inventory data, I'll mention this as well. You have products are sold, products are returned, your stock goes down, and then it's replenished. So for all of these scenarios, we're not necessarily getting records of information every single day or every single week, whatever kind of level that your data is coming in at. Generally, I've found that you're only going to have data come in when something changes, when there's an update or an activity, okay? There's, of course, lots of other types of data that could be scaffolded, but these, I just thought I'd talk about these three because these are three that I personally have experience with. So yeah, so the first example, talk about customer data, kind of a generic example that I created. So in this example, the data is coming in at a daily level, okay? And we're talking about customers who can join or exit at any time in this example. And the question that we need to answer is how many customers do we have on a given day? So this could be employees, this could be subscribers, this could be anything. This is customers. How many customers do we have on a given day? And we want to see this trend over time, okay? So I'm going to jump over to Alteryx to start with. Here we go. Great, okay. So here's Alteryx. I'll do some zooming because I know the screen, some of the tools here can appear kind of on the small side. So I'll zoom in as I need to. So what I want to show you here is this first input tool. This is my data that's going into this workflow to start it off. I'm just going to pull it up in Excel really big so you can see that this is the original data. This is what we have to work with. And we've been tasked with, I need to see the trend. I need to see the head count over time. And I'm just going to make sure. Great. Just making sure you can see my screen. Perfect. So yeah, so here's the actual data. We only have 11 rows of data. So just to kind of talk through it a bit, we have this customer, Andrew, we'll say. So he joined, he left, and he joined back again on different dates, starting from the 4th of August of this year. So only a couple months back, okay? Fictitious company, okay? I'll jump down to Sarah. This customer, Sarah, joined us on the 20th of September, and her row says active. So what I'm assuming there is she joined on the 20th of September, and she's been active ever since, because I don't have any other rows since then to tell me otherwise, okay? So on and so forth in this mix of customers here. So that's kind of how the data works. We're only getting rows when something happens, when there's a change, okay? And this is quite common. So in order to see like this head count or this customer count over time, we need more information. We need more rows. We basically need to know these customers. We need to know their status every single day to be able to put that into Tableau to visualize it, okay? So we actually need way more data than what we have here, okay? So how do we do that? Okay, so in Alteryx, what we're first gonna do is figure out in our data set, what's the earliest date that anything ever happened? So you could think of this as, when did this data set start? When did this company start? When was this sort of data set born, so to speak, if you want to think of it that way. To be honest, we could look at this and figure it out that it's the 4th of August because it's such a small data set. But in reality, in a working environment, when you have thousands and millions of rows, that's actually going to be quite hard to do. So I just threw on a sorting tool so that we can find out, I'm sorting the date by ascending to find out and confirm that, yes, indeed, the earliest date in this data set is the 4th of August. Okay. So what I'm going to do down here, this tool, this is a text input tool. I'm basically telling Alteryx, okay, I want to start with this date, the 4th of August. I called it fake date, okay? And then I jump to this, so there's my 4th of August. I jump to this tool called generate rows. So generate rows is where I'm asking Alteryx through these expressions and formulas over here. I'm basically asking Alteryx to give me every day, give me every date since the 4th of August, okay? So when that happens, I pre-run this workflow, by the way, just to make sure we didn't come across any, just to call that out. I pre-ran this to make sure I didn't have any issues in the screen share and that. So yeah, so this generate rows tool gives me 129 records. Or if you want to think of it this way, there have been 129 days since the 4th of August up to yesterday. Okay, so here's my 4th of August. If I scroll down here, 10th of December was yesterday, okay? So I have 129 days, all right? So basically, you could think of it this way. I need to attach those 129 days onto every single row here, okay? That's what we need, all right? When I do that, I'm gonna zoom out a sec, just show you. We've got 11 rows of data. If we multiply that by our 129 days, we're gonna have 1,419 rows. That's way more rows than we originally had, okay? When I come into this tool, okay, we've got our 1,419 records or rows. Okay, now I'm going to back up a sec. We actually don't need every single one of those rows because not all of those rows that we generated make sense. Okay, so what does that mean? If I go to this formula tool, what I'm going to do here is basically filter out the rows that make no sense in terms of the date. What does that mean? Okay, I'll come back to the original data. So this customer, Sarah, I take her because she's kind of nice and clean. She only joined the 20th of September. So her, for example, any record that we generated for her prior to the 20th of September makes no sense because she wasn't part of this data set. She wasn't a customer. She was not a subscriber. She wasn't here yet. So having any record about this particular customer prior to their earliest joining, we want to get rid of them. We want to take them out of the data set because they don't make any sense. We basically want Sarah's status active on a line every day since the 20th of September. Okay, so basically this tool, I'm going to jump back here to the formula tool. This tool flags each row as to whether or not the date makes sense. I'll just word it that way. So it puts a flag on each row. And then when I get to this next tool is the filter tool, which is zoom in a bit. This tool is basically just saying, okay, if it's true, put the records to the top section. If it's false, go to the bottom section, the true and the false outputs on this particular tool. So in this case, we want the true records. Okay, these are the rows that matter to us. These are the ones that make sense. These are the records that are good, so to speak. So we're down to, if you keep an eye here, 809 records. All right. So when I come to the next tool, I have more work to do. What I need to do, remember that we need to know a head count. We need to know the number of customers on a given day. So that's numeric, right? So I'm going to assign a numeric value to those statuses on every single line. Okay, so if the status is active, the activity that happened that day, if it's active, I'm going to give it number 1. If it's terminated, I'm going to give it a -1. Okay, I come to the next tool. I'm basically here, I'm just selecting the columns that are relevant because we generate columns as we go and we don't necessarily need all those columns to work with. So I'm just going to drop off the columns that we don't need in this example. The final piece here is the summarization tool. So what's happening here is I'm asking Alteryx to say, hey, take those records and group them, okay? I'm saying for each customer and date, sum the status numbers. Okay, so that's going to be my head count for each customer and date, sum up the status numbers. Now, really here, I could probably just keep date because we want to know, we're not too interested in who the customers are for this example. We actually just want to know how many customers we have on a date, but I kept it in for the moment anyway. So when I come here, we end up with our 383 records. What I'm going to do, so this is a very basic, kind of simple looking data set. I'm just going to copy this and I want to come over to Tableau. And I'm going to paste it in here with a Control-Z, just using the clipboard. So I'm going to use this second one. Again, I just did a little pre-pasting in case I ran into trouble, so I'm just going to do it live here. So I'm going to be focused on this second clipboard here. So I take my fake date, throw it up to columns, go continuous, and Tableau decided that that figure was a dimension. I'm just going to bring it down here to measures because we're going to aggregate that. If I double click that, you can see now we have a bit of a line chart, okay? I'm going to throw the labels on just so you can see. So here we have, this is the answer to the question. So the trend of headcount over time, or the trend of the number of customers we have on a given day over time. So we can see just from memory in the data set, the first customer arriving in was Andrew on the 4th of August, so our headcount was 1. He dropped off on the 10th of August, so we went down to 0. We actually had no customers at that time. Then we jumped back up to 1, so on and so forth. And then as of yesterday, the 10th of December, we had 3 customers. So again, I think this is something that this is kind of a sort of a classic scaffolding example where you need to look at a trend over time. So with that, I'll stop with that example. I'll move to the second example, which is related to sales and inventory data. Okay, so let me jump over to that. Minimize this. Okay. Great. So here we go. So this is a different example. A lot of the concept and the principle is the same, but this is a real example of something I did in work. So I've kind of spoofed the data and filtered it to make it a little bit easier to work with to kind of show it to you guys today. But this is a real example of something I did in work. So I think it helps when you see something that's actually happened in business to see how you can apply some of these concepts. So yeah, we're going to talk about sales and inventory data in this scenario. So the data in this example is reported at a weekly level. So last example, we were talking daily, so 365 days in a year. Here we're talking weekly, so 52 times a year, 52 incidences a year where we might have data reported, okay? Sales and inventory data reported. In this example, adding to a bit of the complexity here is that the sales data is in one place and the inventory data is in another. So they're stored separately, but both at a weekly level. What I want to call out, again, this is relevant for kind of scaffolding, is in this scenario, sometimes we have changes to the sales, but no change to the inventory, okay? And vice versa. Sometimes we have changes to the inventory, but no changes to the sales, okay? And the third scenario, where neither have any changes, so we have no record at all, okay? So for the first two scenarios, from a scaffolding perspective, we need to flag the fact that there was basically zero, there was no activity for the inventory side, and then in the next scenario, the sales side. So we have to like plug in those zeros or scaffold in those zeros if you want to think of it that way. And then really where the scaffolding comes in is this last scenario when we have neither change, because we need those weeks where there was nothing happening, we need those weeks to be inserted into the data set. So the ask here, again, this is a real example, was to produce a report to show weeks of stock. So it's also known as weeks of supply. This is an inventory planning KPI or key performance indicator for all of our products. So it's a common metric for inventory planning in general. So challenges here are, again, that the data is in two places, sales in one place, inventory in another, and the gaps that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so those are kind of the challenges around this. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Okay, and what I want to show to you guys here is the calculation for weeks of stock. again, is well-known metric. You have your inventory on hand as your numerator, okay? And remember that our inventory is in one place, okay? And we're dividing that by our denominator, which is average amount sold over the last number of weeks, whatever that is, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, however many weeks we want to average our sales over. So our denominator is in a separate data source, okay? So a couple of things need to happen here. Before we can do anything, we need to join the data together. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. I want to focus on the scaffolding piece. But what I want to drive home is that the numerator is in one data source and your denominator is in the other. So these need to be brought into the same source so that we can do this math using Tableau. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to jump back to Alteryx. So here's a workflow. Again, just calling out up here, we're talking about data that comes in on a weekly basis. And in this example, we're looking at the first 49 weeks of last year, of 2019. Yeah, just as a kind of sample data set. And in this case, the two sources, the sales and the inventory, have quite a similar structure. So in terms of joining them, that helps with the joining piece. So this top section here, again, I'm not going to spend time on it. That's the joining of the data sets. But once that's done, we end up with, down here, 744 records. So basically up here, this piece is the joining piece. Okay, down here in this box, this is all the scaffolding magic. This is where the magic happens on the scaffolding piece. Okay, so what I'll start with is we're going to park this for a second. So our actual data, our actual sales and inventory data, I'm going to park that for a sec up there. What we need to first figure out is we need to figure out what are all the possible times and ways that our product could have been sold. All right, we need to find all the possible combinations. All right, so what I'm doing here with these two tools is I'm taking sales data and inventory data. I'm coming down here into a union tool. So I'm basically just stacking them on top of each other. And I'm doing that because what I need to find out is I'm going to start with this summary tool here, because this is, I think, maybe the most straightforward. This tool here, I'm asking Alteryx to tell me all the possible combinations of product with its assigned product category and product line. So in this scenario, there's only 12 combinations. Okay, here's the 12 products. Here are the product categories that those products belong to and the product line that they belong to. Okay, again, I stripped this data set way down. It's actually there's actually much more in the real thing, but I just stripped this down to be able to kind of show you guys a real example. So that's our list of possible combinations for the product. Okay, I'm going to jump to the top one. Okay, the top one tells me every combination of where my 12 products could be sold. So what store could it be sold at and what country could it be sold at? Because I need to know how many ways could it possibly be sold. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to talk about the middle section. All right, the middle section here. This is how we're working out the time. This is how we're going to figure out, we're going to assign all of the weeks. So remember I said we're looking at 49 weeks in the year. I basically filtered out 49 weeks worth of data. So I know that there's 49 there. But basically we'll start with this one. This tool, and notice like all these summary tools, they're coming off that union of the two sources. Again, this is to find out all of our possible combinations. So if I come here to this summary tool, I'm asking Alteryx, hey, tell me what is the earliest week and tell me the most recent week in that data set that exists, okay? So in this scenario, the earliest week in that data set is the 5th of January, and the latest data set was the 7th of December last year, 2019, okay? So in this next tool, it might look familiar. This is the Generate Rows tool. Generate Rows is your friend when it comes to data scaffolding. When we get to Generate Rows, I'm basically telling Alteryx, hey, fill in all of the missing week endings between those two dates that we just identified here. So I basically told it, hey, give me all the week endings in between the 5th of Jan and the 7th of December last year. Okay, so that's what it's doing. When that's done, we end up with 49 records. Okay, what's happening here is a little bit company specific. I'm just assigning a week number to those weeks. Depending on how a calendar falls, you could have some extra days at the start or the end of the year that you might want to assign to a specific week. So I'm just mentioning that because that's something that comes up. you know, it depends on how your organization does things. But so that's why this is here, because I know from, I know how we like to assign our weeks. So that's what this piece is here for, so that I can join in and bring our specific week number, okay? So when I take these date pieces, I'm left with, when I join these together, this is the join tool. When I get to the end here, I get to the summary tool. What I'm left with for my dates are the week ending 5th of Jan of 2019, and I get all the way down to 12th of December, and I have the week number associated with those dates, okay? So up here, I've worked out all the possible ways the product could be sold, and here I've worked out all the different times the product could have been sold, okay? So when you join those together, we end up with 833 records, okay? So let's step back a sec. We've just figured out 833 records. That means that that there were 833 instances or potential ways that a product could have been sold or inventory could have had action taken against it. Okay, so 833 instances. If we come back here to our original data, this has 744. What does that mean? Okay, I'm going to jump ahead here. This is a join tool. So what I'm doing here is I'm joining our original data. This is our actual sale and inventory data. I'm going to join it up to our 833 records that we scaffolded. We created this, okay, to figure out the items and the times that we should have had information for, if you want to think of it that way. I'm going to fly through this a bit because I'm conscious of time. But on this join tool, on the left side, it's going to be blank. That's good, because our 744 records should all have a match in this data that we created ourselves, kind of, if you want to think of it that way. Okay, so it makes sense that the left side is blank. That's a good thing. If we come to the join section, this is where the two meet. We have 744 matches. Perfect. Makes sense, because I would have expected our real data, our 744 records, all to have a match in what we created down here. That's what I would be expecting, okay? On the right-hand side, this is the magic. The difference is 89. So as in the difference between our 833 and our 744 records, that difference is 89. These are the instances that were missing from the original data set to be able to produce our weeks of stock calculation in Tableau, okay? So this is the magic of it starting to come together. So for these 89 records, we need to plug in the fact that nothing happened, that there was no transaction. So I'm basically assigning my quantities, sorry, my values of sales. So the sell-through quantity, sell-through dollar are sales from the sales data source, and the on-hand quantity and on-hand dollar, that's the on-hand value. Those are coming from our inventory source, if you might recall. So for these 89 records, we're basically assigning the fact that there was no action, there was no activity for those lines. But we need those lines because, remember, we need to be able to calculate the average number of the average sales over the past number of weeks. Well, those past number of weeks need to be consecutive. So if there was 2 weeks where we had nothing, we need to factor that into the average, because if the rows weren't there, your average would actually be looking back at different weeks, if that makes sense. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that's why we need these dummy rows to be inserted, because you want to make sure that that average that you're dividing by is correct, okay? So, so when we go from there, now we're looking at basically our complete set. So we have 833 records. We're making sure that the sort is in order, again, because the weeks, it needs to be sorted in a particular way so that when we get to Tableau and we put in table calculations, they work properly and they're correct, okay? Last piece here, before I jump into Tableau, is that's the find and replace tool. So I mentioned in the beginning, the product hierarchy here. So our product, our item number with its category and line, our dummy records have, oops, sorry, 80, sorry. Our 89 dummy records have no product associated with them because we made them up, yeah? So that's where find and replace comes in handy. Find and replace comes in, plugs in that information so that we have a complete data set. And this data will have all pieces of information for all time, basically, okay? So this is us at the end of the data set. So I'm gonna jump now to the Tableau side. It's the fun part. Now we can visualize it now that the data is in order. So let me jump to the Tableau side. So here we are. Time check. I think I'm still good. So yeah, so here we are. This is what the data looks like now. Now that we've taken our two sources, we join them together, we scaffolded in some pieces that we're missing. So here's our full complete data set. We can do calculations to our heart's content now. This is great stuff. So we get to the, I'm going to go to this tab, the WAS calculation, week to start calculation. So I put on a couple filters just to make this easier to see, to bring it down to a smaller batch of data on here. But basically what we can see now that we could not do before is, sorry, let me get rid of this a sec. Let me talk about the data that's here. So this is our on-hand quantity. That's from our inventory data. We're seeing our sell-through quantity, which came from our sales data. This moving average of sell-through. So I'm going to just take a peek into this table calculation. All this is it's a simple moving average of 6 weeks. So it's looking back over the 6 weeks and dividing it by 6. So if we take these cells here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we were to take that and divide it by 6, we're going to get 28.2. Okay. So now you might recall our weeks of stock calculation is our inventory on hand, which here is 87. And we're going to divide it by the average sold over the last X number of weeks. That's our 28.2. We're going to get 3.1 weeks of stock. So that's the answer to the question of how many weeks of stock do we have for a particular product. Okay. What I want to jump to quickly is just a screen. I'll just take a quick peek at this table calculation just to kind of show you. This is basically, sorry, not here, over here. So just to show you on-hand quantity divided by window average, divided by that average. So the thing here that's really awesome is this will keep updating. As new data comes in, this just keeps going. We don't have to touch it. It's fantastic. So let me jump to, I'm going to jump back to PowerPoint, and I'm just going to show you a screenshot of the real report, just to call out a couple things. So yeah, why is it so awesome to have this now in Tableau? Okay, so first thing, the user can select if they want to see weeks of stock in terms of the units or the value of the units. Okay, 10:05, perfect. So yeah, the user can select what they want to see by use of a parameter. Okay, so I didn't build that into the sample, but in the actual piece, this has been really helpful because different parts of the business may want to look at it different ways. Okay, so this serves different purposes that way. Okay, the user can select the number of weeks they want to look back. Again, using a parameter in a table calculation down here. The user is choosing the number of weeks. Some folks want to see a 3-week based weeks of stock. Some folks want to see 6 weeks. Some folks want to see a whole quarter. They want to see 13 weeks, whatever. The user can choose what they want. So we're actually serving a lot of users here, because rather than making different reports, hard coding it with, okay, this one's on 3 weeks, this one's on 6 weeks, maybe you have a report that has 25 tabs. This actually eliminates the need for that because we can just use parameters, which is awesome. Last thing, this is totally automated, fully automated. So the Alteryx piece runs on Alteryx Scheduler. So as we get data coming in during the week, it automatically is running on a schedule, refreshes the data. Same thing could be done using Tableau Prep. Okay, I just want to mention that. I know Tableau Prep has some scheduling functionality, exact same thing. The concept is the same. This just happens to be done using Alteryx, but the data refresh, it's a scheduled job. And once the data hits the data source on the Tableau side, and then this is saved up to Tableau server, it refreshes. So this is zero touch. All the table calculations and the parameters have been built in to be flexible, to roll with whatever the user is choosing and whatever data is coming in. So totally zero touch. Time check. I'm just going to mention, and then we'll go to questions. I was just kind of showing here on the screen. In this example, in the real scenario, it can be more helpful in business to see the most recent week to your left. So considering your table calculations, if you're doing your table calcs here, you just might need to pay attention to the direction of your moving average. So in this case, I had to flip the direction compared to the live example I showed you. But basically, in week 26, we'll say for this particular customer, this is, sorry, the user has chosen weeks of stock unit. Here's the 6-week look back because they've chosen 6 weeks here. So it's taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's taking these 6 weeks of units sold, the sell-through units, dividing it by 6 to give us our weekly average of 7,500 units per week. So we take our on-hand quantity, which is our 28,000. We're dividing it by that weekly average to give us 3.7 weeks of stock during week 26. And again, this keeps rolling for every week. So it's beautiful. You don't have to touch it. So that's the end of that example. I know there's a lot in there. I'm very much aware. When I got going with this and I started preparing it, I was kind of like, oh God, there's a lot in here. How do I pack this into like 35 minutes? But so yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So, you know, I'm happy to take some questions now, or certainly reach out to me after this. If, you know, maybe you have a scenario or a problem that you think some of this could be helpful with. And again, it's really the concepts that I think is the main takeaway here. The tool doesn't really matter. You know, you can use Alteryx, Tableau Prep. There's some instances, if your data set is small enough, you can do this using kind of join calculations in Tableau and just Excel. So yeah, so that's that. You can find me through my blog or on Twitter. I'm not sure if we have questions. I'll click the chat box now.
We don't have, I don't think we have any questions,
Cool.
at least in the Q&A box, but
Okay.
we do have time. So I would highly encourage everybody to take advantage of Katie while she is here and get those questions out there for her. Yes, Doc, I agree. Professor for the day, Katie. That would be amazing. Oh my gosh, there was so much in here. I'm gonna have to rewatch this.
Yeah, I hope it's not too overwhelming. There's a lot in here. When I started preparing, I was like, maybe I should have just done one example, but I think it helps when you can talk about like a real problem, you know, real data. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. No, it's so good. And I think really helpful. And just breaking it down from like, first of all, the real world example, but then even just backing up for a second and saying, okay, so like, what is data scaffolding? Because if we don't have that piece down, the rest of it, you know, it's
yeah,
just, then we become like, technically, functionally, we can do it, but do we actually understand it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think kind of the first time I'd heard of data scaffolding and I knew that like it was used in a couple different things, but like once I got my head around it, I was honestly blown away. Like I was like the emoji with the head, you know, I was like, oh my God, this is genius stuff. Like this can really, and then I was thinking back to like older times, different jobs where I was like, oh my God, that's what I needed. And I just didn't know, you know, I didn't know that this was possible, you know. You know, for the overtime questions, it's great to have like the here and now, but the question is always, well, we want to see the trend. We want to see it over time. So I think it's really, if you can take the time to work through it and see, you know, can this help with different questions you might have or problems that you have to solve at work, it can be worth, you know, having to think about to see, does it work for your scenario? So
Awesome.
cool.
All right. Well, there aren't any questions right now, but I know for sure people loved it. And oh, and then Jim says there's one more use case that needs scaffolding and he will reach out to you.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
if you love this presentation, please share it, shout it out on social using the hashtag TFF2020 and Katie's Twitter handle, KT Kilroy. That would mean the world. Share something that you found interesting, something like your aha, or just that generally Katie killed it. First time, what? This is amazing.
You're very kind. You're very kind, Emily. Thank you. And thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Awesome. You did amazing. All right, we are going to take a break